side. You've been keeping your options open, and that's pretty much it. Do you speak Cambodian?
I don't. No, I was adopted.
You were adopted. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Going to Allie.
Oh goodness.
Allie here. I think your Instagram. There's a tagline that says, "Wait." Oh, okay. Never mind. That's somebody else. My bad. You describe yourself as a polyamorous, disabled, queer woman who used to run an all-queer honey group.
Indeed, I did.
And you have so many stories. First off, what is a honey group?
That was what they cumulatively named it. It was just that, like, the girls did not feel safe whenever cis men were in the group because a lot of them had trauma. I had a bunch of friends that I've never been, like, a dancer like these lovely gals have. Love that.
Yeah.
Could never personally because, like, I just don't think that I could handle it. But I was a go-go dancer. I met a bunch of girls that wanted, like, a community of queer women to hang out with.
It's like a meetup group.
Chose it. Yeah.
Meetup group. You guys had a group. How many people were in the group? Queer Honey Bunny group?
I think the most that were ever in the group was 45.
45.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned something there that I kind of took a note on. You said that a lot of these women, they had trauma with cis men. So cis men were not obviously allowed to join the group. That's my understanding. Do you think that this is granting that they had this trauma, these poor experiences with cis men, which, by the way, well, that's a whole nother I'll save the cis conversation for later, I guess. But do you think that this is a sexist position to hold?
I think it could be. I think that just in my position, it was asked of me that cis men were not included because it was to find other queer women to hang out with. Like, I don't think that all spaces need to include everyone.
Yeah, sure. I don't think, I think you could, for example, want to, like, associate with people of a certain group. You're not necessarily trying to preclude other people, but the justification for precluding other people seems to be, I had one, two, or perhaps multiple poor experiences with cis men, ergo.
It wasn't just personal experiences. It was just like the way.
Well, that's the first thing you said. So.
Yes, they've had a lot of them did, but I'm just saying it's not all just personal experience of like a trauma happened to me, but just like movies portray men in dark shadows. Like, if you want to go that deep of, like, not feeling safe in a group, like, this group was meant for, like, women to come and have pool parties, and we hosted going to queer clubs, and I just don't think that number one would have fit in this space anyways, but also with the majority of women in my group, and by majority I mean like everyone but maybe one, stating that they would not have felt safe to fully be themselves in that environment if a cis man was there. That speaks volumes to me, and I didn't need to make a decision. Would
you be fine, like, with establishments also doing these kind of exclusions, like a business, for example?
I think that's harder. I think, like, how do you...
Like, what about an all-female gym, and they're like, hey, we acknowledge that women have had poor experiences with men, so we're going to, like, exclude men from joining this gym, and it's going to be an all-women gym. Like, would you be okay with that, or...?
I don't think it's, like, any of my business to say whether you can do it or not, but I think if I were the business owner, I don't know how you would pull something like that off and still be inclusive.
Like, legally?
Not legally, just, like, respectfully on, like, if someone comes into a gym and you bring in, like, you're bringing in all kinds of conversations, like, a trans woman comes in, like, how do you define who a trans woman is if they say they're a trans woman?
Sure. I work at a woman's gym.
What?
I work at a woman's gym.
Yeah, see, I think it can be done.
I just women at ours.
Right, so I'm just going to go ahead and grant that if you were to start a business, you'd be allowed to have trans women. I'm speaking about, I personally don't like this term, but cis men.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fine. Why would it not be fine?
For the business to exclude cis men?
Yeah.
Okay. So similarly then, I assume you'd be fine with, like, businesses excluding cis women, like banning them from being able to enter businesses and establishments?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So you're, like, in favor of segregation?
What about gay men?
Say that again?
What about gay men?
Again, you're coming down to, like, how are you going to define... Like, weren't all queer clubs supposed to be just for queer people, but straight men still go in to vet women?
Well, here, I'll define it pretty easily. If you're a part of a same-sex relationship and you're a male, you can't join our
Thank you
gym.
for mansplaining that to me. I appreciate it actually, like, so much.
How do you, well, I don't understand. How do you say it depends on your definition, and then when I give you the definition, you call it mansplaining?
No, I'm saying, like,
that? Can you
I'm saying
that
as a business owner, when someone's coming to your door, And you're going to turn them away, like, based on XYZ? Like, that's
Did you
just
want the
cornering
definition,
someone
or
into
did you want to
agreeing
keep
that they're
spurting
down
out?
for segregation.
I mean, I'm happy to give you the definition that you asked for. So the definition would be two males who are same sex.
For sure.
And they only have sex with males. You call them homosexuals, and you want to ban them from the business. There you go. There's your definition. I'm sorry that I had to mansplain that for you, giving you the definition that you asked for. But there you go.
If cumulatively gay men, which I'm not saying they have or will, created an unsafe environment for the other people who wanted to be in that business, then I would agree with it.
So if straight heterosexual cis males said nobody except straight heterosexual cis males can come to this gym, you would agree with that?
Yes, wasn't that what you just asked me?
Well, I'm just clarifying. I just wanted a yes or no. So I mean, so as long as you're fine with that, then the inclusivity portion of this, if men wanted to have a gym that was only exclusive to heteronormative behavior, you wouldn't actually have an issue with that. Just want to be clear.
I think that that's cornering someone into an answer that's super controversial. It comes down to what is the cause? I mean, what is the reason? Is it for safety?
Because they don't want them there.
Is it for safety? Or is it to be an asshole?
Sure. Just dealing with them could potentially create an unsafe situation for both parties, right? Like if you were a bigot, like just think about this logically. Let's say that they were all just bigots. They just didn't like them because they were homosexuals. How would that not create an unsafe situation by letting them in to begin with?
I just don't think that you can cumulatively have that many people unless you're exclusively asking for it to be invited into a space. You're assuming that every man in a gym is going to be a bigot, or are you just saying that there's a bigot gym?
Well, no, I'm saying that let's say there's a gym which is bigoted on purpose because that's what they want, right?
Yeah, that's the part that I have an issue.
They only want bigoted people to come to this gym. That's the only thing that they care about, is that you're what you would consider to be a bigot. They only want heteronormative, cis, straight men in the gym. And
sure.
That's it. Okay, so if that was the case and all of the men who were joining that gym have the same type of ideology, wouldn't it necessarily follow that it would be unsafe for somebody who didn't follow that suit, that they would be unsafe just by trying to join it?
Yeah, I hear you. And I mean, if they all want to meet up in one space and have that opinion for themselves, then they can go for it. I don't want to be there, so.
A couple things, a couple clarifying things, I guess. Would you, it sounds like you're kind of okay with people like business owners being able to discriminate. Is that a fair?
To discriminate? No. To create safe environments? Yes.
Okay. So and so this, for gender, you think this is fair play, correct?
Can I ask you a question, a follow-up question? Can I answer your question with a question? Because you seem to do.
How about answer my question, then you can ask me a question, and I'll answer your question.
How about no? Is there a reason why you're trying to corner me into having a negative answer? Because you did it at the beginning of our conversation, too.
How is it cornering you? And what do you mean by negative answer?
Because every time I answer it with a logical standpoint of women should all cumulatively be able to feel safe in an environment. And if we require being only with women, then isn't that just for safety? I don't understand the issue.
Oh, okay, for safety. He's testing the supposition.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think I'm not sure what you mean by cornering, but.
No, I just mean every time I have a logical answer, there's a follow-up question with
when people
the word segregation put into it.
When people make or have inductive reasoning, which you're using right now, which is fine, right? That's most of the reasoning that most people use is inductive. Most of the time it's not tested, but most inductive reasoning is based around suppositions and suppositions which people hold. So all that's happening when you say, why are you trying to corner me into a negative answer? That's the opposite of what's happening.
I just want to know if there was a reason.
Hang on, almost done. That's the opposite of what's happening. He's trying to corner you into an answer, whether it's negative or positive. It's totally irrelevant. Just trying to see where the inductive reasoning follows.
Great.
But so I think I was asking a question there. It sounded like you didn't want to answer it unless you do.
Am I fine with businesses choosing who they want to do business for? Yes.
Okay, you're fine with that. So for example, and you said for safety reasons, that's enough justification for wanting to preclude people from being able to participate in your business? Can you stop?
Sure.
Okay. So if like a cohort or group of like white people, for example, felt unsafe around black people because they had anecdotal, like they had their own poor experiences that came down to safety when it came to actual experiences with black people, and they said, I don't want to allow black people into my businesses, you'd be okay with that?
Morally okay with it? No. Do I think that it could happen? Law and morals are very different.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Why would it be immoral, though?
What do you mean?
Why would that be immoral?
I was literally told I was not allowed to say certain words, so.
Oh, well, I mean, it's more so like there's certain topics we have to avoid, but like we can talk about racism. We just don't want you to be racist on the show.
Understood.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Why? Yes. I'm just wondering why.
Like we don't want you to use slurs or like say the N-word or like that sort of stuff. So.
For sure. I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no problem. So I understand too, when you have a video link like this, it's difficult sometimes when you have a room full of people to communicate back and forth. So that's actually a problem I have too. But my question was, why would that be actually a moral quandary for you? If you don't have any actual issues with it as a matter of law, let's say, why would it actually stand as a moral quandary?
Because there's a racial issue there.
Well, wouldn't it be like a gender or sex issue then?
For sure, but what you're saying is like, oh, we have quantified proof, we have quantified evidence. I'm putting this evidence in front of you of why black people have made this group of white people feel unsafe, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if you open up your viewpoint and you look at the masses? What if you say, instead of looking at this group of people that chose it, scientifically, you can't just handpick which group you want to use as a control, right? So if you're looking at everyone in the United States, for example, that's not the popular opinion. So then I would say that's not. I don't morally agree with that.
This would be counter to intersectionality, though, because intersectionality is literally making all of these groups into micro groups as controls, just so that they can test for such offenses. So if that is the case.
Yeah, but in this hypothetical, we're referring to people who know each other, right?
As we're having this conversation, I couldn't actually think of a way that you could create controls better than to take micro groups and then apply whatever the idea of social injustice that particular group has, and then follow it to its conclusion, essentially. Like, how else could you even do that as a control?
By choosing controls that don't know each other. Because in the hypothetical is that this group of people got together, which means they know each other.
Well, let's say they didn't get together, right? But they all had kind of something of the same shared experience, and they all wanted to get together. Like, it seems like it's kind of a silly distinction without merit, right?
Not necessarily if you're asking me how to find a control. That's going back to the other conversation, right?
Yeah, but I mean, even this, if we had this as a control, we could just factor in whatever control you wanted to. It still wouldn't really get to the heart of the moral quandary. If one race or another race says that they feel discriminated against based on A, B, C, and D.
It's opinion-based, yeah. I get what you're saying. I mean, I totally hear your opinion. I hear you. However, I think like when you're getting down to like morality, I don't think that anything should be separated. I don't think that anyone should fear for their life when they walk or roll down the street. I don't think that, any of this should be a topic of conversation because nobody should be put in a position where they have to choose. But we have.
Yeah, but what you're going off of isn't even brute facts. It's just feelings, right? So you're going off the idea people feel unsafe. They feel like bad things going to happen, even if there is actually no kind of statistical data to back that up. But that's a double-edged sword. Why couldn't the other group say the exact same thing in opposition?
I didn't say that they couldn't.
This makes us feel unsafe. This makes us feel discriminated against, et cetera, et cetera. It'd be the same exact thing.
For sure. I hear what you're saying. However, again, it comes down to like history and facts. And whenever you add the two together, I create emotion, you create emotion. Emotions don't just fly at you and hit you in the head. Like they come from a place based in fact, based in history.
But
whether
no,
that's yesterday
don't come from a place based in fact. That's absurd.
No, I'm saying you don't just get an emotion because it whacks you in the head. It comes from somewhere. You have something that influences you, and then you have an emotion. I'm just saying.
Or you have nothing that influences you, and you have an emotion because biology is strange, right? So it's like even that statement in and of itself is kind of silly. But if you were to back it up, right, and look at because what you're saying is let's look at the macro versus the micro. I think that's fair, right? I think that's fair to say I want to look at kind of the entire picture instead of the micro picture. But the only way to get a clear picture of the macro would be for you to use intersectional logic, right? So you would have to come in and say this group and this group and this group. Even, in fact, when you even reference historical standards, you could only apply them through the prism of the group. That would be like feminist standpoint theory, for instance. Feminists say, well, history should be revised through the lens of women. Otherwise, how could you really know what their lived experience was? But wouldn't that be the same case with any group?
I mean, I guess it could be. It just comes down to when you're asking my opinion, I base it off of supporting what has happened. Again, you can go down to intersectionality and crossover and this and that. And for each and every scenario that you could come up with, I'm going to tell you, if it creates a safe environment where there already was not one, more power to you. Do I want to be a part of all of those situations? Most likely not.
But would you only, my follow-up question to this then is, would you only base that around how people felt, if they felt safe, versus if there was an objective standard?
No, and that's why I was saying, I understand what you're saying.
If you were to say, okay, so if that's the case, then if there were such a discriminatory gym, let's say, who only discriminated against people who were LGBTQ in this particular instance, and the LGBTQ people felt unsafe due to that, however, the brute fact was not that they were actually unsafe, then who do we side with there?
I don't think you side with anyone. I think that's
You don't think so?
Listen, to side with one side on any situation you can give me, I don't agree with. I think that you should put yourself in each and everyone's shoes. Not to say I could ever actually know what that person is going through, but the only way we're going to find any kind of unity, any kind of, level common ground, is by trying to start to understand other people's lived experiences.
Yeah, sure, but what if you do understand their lived experience?
I don't think you can truly understand.
Even based on your lived experience and what you're telling me from your emotional standpoint, I still reject it because applied in the real world doesn't make any sense, or it's silly, or I just have a fundamental disagreement with it. The idea that you can just kind of partake in someone's shoes and then through an empathetic link discover that you have more shared in common than not, I think that there's some possibility there. However, I also think that there's good logical refutations that you can make for why you should often ignore the empathetic experience and ignore why it is that people want you to walk a mile in their shoes. It's often detrimental to you to do so, right?
That's your opinion.
You don't think so?
I think that it could be in a scenario if you gave them one I agreed with, but I can't just blanketly agree with a vague scenario.
Well, here's a good example of it. Let's take a principle that you're talking about here, which is a harm principle based around safety. If you were to say, for instance, so I'm an Orthodox Christian, if you were to say that, Andrew, it causes great harm for you to not use a person's gendered pronouns. It causes them harm, causes them some degree of suffering and some degree of discomfort. I could equally counter with, but as an Orthodox Christian, it causes me a great degree of discomfort to lie to them because from my worldview, that's exactly what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Now, in this case, you have to put yourself in my shoes and empathize with me while I empathize with you. Who do we side with here?
If you're an Orthodox Christian, isn't there something that says that you should love others equally and not judge?
Yeah.
Isn't that the same harm you're doing to yourself?
No, first of all, of course, you can righteously judge. This is a biblical principle. And without righteous judgment, you could never actually do a condemnation of sin ever. So you have to have righteous judgment. But not only that, the idea here is, even if this was the case, that you're supposed to show love, and you are, it's not unloving to tell the truth. And from the prism of the Christian, they believe they're telling the truth and that you're lying and demanding they lie. That's their lived experience. That's their worldview.
Okay, so if that's their lived worldview, then I would say for that person to exit the scenario. That's when you walk away. You don't cause any kind of hoopla and you just go. Because you can't change everyone's opinion. You can't change everyone's...
Hang on, see what I mean? Why don't they go?
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, they go. So in the case of you're in a convenience store or something like this.
Okay, well, that's pushing it.
Somebody says, it's ma'am, and you say, no, it's sir. Why are they wrong?
In their own opinion, they're not wrong, and I get what you're getting at.
Right,
I get what you're getting at, but telling them to leave, now you're opening a whole other book.
Who do we side with?
I don't know. I feel like this is such a controversial thing you're trying to get into. That like, as a Christian, how is it more important to you to not lie than to be a kind human and not harm others?
Well, you're asking for a conflict in principle. Why can't
That's what I'm saying.
Both? Why can't I say that I think it's the greatest kindness not to lie to individuals, and so I don't? And this upholds the Christian ethics and principles. But from your worldview, you say, but Andrew, this does harm to us because
can I pause you?
Almost done. Because it makes us feel bad, makes us feel terrible, this type of thing. It's like, that's fair, but I still need to know, how do we decide these threshold breakers exactly?
Okay, I have genuinely a question I would love to hear your answer on. Say your religion again?
Can you answer mine and then I'll answer yours?
That's fine, but
Okay, answer mine and then I'll answer yours. That's fair.
Who should I side with? I don't have an answer. I think each person is on their own side, and if I were to walk in personally, myself in that scenario, I would diffuse the situation because neither one is going to change either person's mind. You are entitled to your own opinion.
How do you diffuse it?
Go up and actually be a kind human being and say, hey, I totally get that you guys have differences here, but let's just walk away.
Yeah,
there is literally no point in continuing having confrontation like that other than to cause a scene.
So, your expectation is that these people are still going to get along well, even though one demands that the other from their worldview lies to them.
I never said you had to get along.
The other one demands from their worldview that what you need to tell me is what I consider the truth to be.
I never said that you had to get along. Hold on, wait. You wanna cut me off when you're talking? Then if I have space to answer your question, I never said that they had to get along. I said diffuse the situation and separate, because I don't think that every opinion has to mesh with every opinion. You walk away and you let it be. So then the ultimate logical entailment here is the idea that groups should segregate from each other. If you choose to not be a part of a group, that's your choice. Yeah, I know, but the ultimate entailment of your logic here is that groups should actually segregate away from each other because you say there's no answer to these questions. No, I think that people who have conflict, if they come into contact. No, that's not true. Some people are assholes and some people aren't. Some people can turn a blind eye and say, have a nice day, and just not use a gender. You could just not use a gender. Who's the asshole in this situation? You could just not use a gender. Who's the asshole in this situation? Tell me. Just not use a gender. Who's the asshole in this situation? You know who the asshole is in this situation. No, I don't. I want you to tell me. Who's the asshole in this situation? The asshole in the situation is the one who's provoking the person who's literally done nothing wrong. Well, which one is that? Jesus Christ. Yeah, you don't know, right? This is the whole problem with intersectionality. This is the whole problem with the foolishness of this ideology. The entailment of what ideology is always that it's going to lead to, we can't actually, if we're going to only use empathy as a metric, or even empathy plus brute facts, and you say, well, give me a specific example, Andrew, of where we're going to end up coming into conflict. Well, now I've just given you an example of two different groups who have two different ideologies. Great, okay. I will answer your question. In that scenario, the one who continues to provoke is the asshole, even if that is the person who has the different gender and you do not agree with them. If they're coming up to you and they're being a complete piece of shit and causing a scene, then I would tell you that that person is the asshole. Yeah, but you got a problem with that too, which is that what is considered a provocation cannot be what is true. So if that is the case, both think they're telling the truth. The one says, I'm not provoking. I'm not referring to what I think the truth is. Hang on. I just let you answer. Let me answer. So if the idea here is the one says to him, listen, I'm not provoking. I'm just demanding basic human respect that they don't misgender me. The other one says, I'm not provoking. I'm just demanding that you don't say that I must lie because you're provoking, right? In this particular case, you consider neither of those or both of them to be provocations. In this scenario, if they're having a calm conversation, they're having a debate about who's right and who's wrong, and they can finally, Isn't that what you just described? One
No.
saying I'm right and the
No.
other one saying I'm right?
Let's say
Or
that
they're
you're
having
just
a pissing
let's say you're
fight,
just
whatever
in
you
a
wanna call
grocery
it.
store. Yeah, let's say you're just in a grocery store. And let's say the Orthodox Christian in this case looks over and he says something like this. Hello, sir. You want me to grab that for you? The person they're talking to looks over and says, actually, I'm a woman. Okay? So I'd appreciate if you address me as ma'am. Okay? The Orthodox Christian says, well, I'm not going to do that because I don't believe that you are this thing that you're claiming you are, not from my worldview. And the other one says, but I am from my worldview. Your reconciliation for this situation is separation. If that is the case, then the advocation would ultimately be segregation.
That's a stretch, but my opinion
How
is
is
that...
it a stretch?
Okay. Do I get to answer? Like with a full
Yeah.
sentence?
Go ahead.
Before you... Okay, great. What you're implying is that someone needs to win in this scenario, right? Like someone needs to come out on top, or we need to segregate them. Yes?
Well, I don't know how you reconcile it. If one feels like they don't have basic human respect or dignity from the one group, and the other group feels like they're not getting the basic respect and dignity due to their group because they're being told they must lie, how exactly do you expect to reconcile that?
I don't think all things need reconciliation, especially in a grocery
that
store when
would
you're just
equal
minding
what?
your business. It is not segregation when you have free speech and you
Separating,
can
right?
just say what you want to say.
Well,
in a
what else
grocery
would
store.
it be? How else would they get on then?
They move on with their lives and they forget about it.
Yeah, okay, but if you're in various communities, you have various communities where you have, various people in them.
Mm-hmm.
The idea here is that you're saying neither side is wrong. Neither side is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides are right.
Because
From your
neither-
worldview, they're both right.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't necessarily, if they're both right, then both of them have a leg to stand on in order to make their case that they deserve to be able to say what is true from their different perspective. That's necessarily going to lead to conflict, and you just said the whole point here is
I
to
just don't
avoid
think it should
conflict.
always lead to conflict. I think that there's just some things that we have differences about, and instead of creating conflict, you can just have differences.
Yeah, but what if those...
Like in this scenario, you are the issue. You are persisting on creating conflict when in my scenario, in the same example you're giving me, if I were the person, if I did identify as something I was not born as, I would politely just say, thank you for your help, but I actually have to go. And now I've diffused the situation. You asked me how I would diffuse it. Boom, done.
Yeah, sure, but have you had your basic human dignity in some way violated?
If it were me personally, no, because this human being is never going to see me again if I have anything to do with it.
Perhaps not you,
So,
but you would
no.
say that most people who are in that situation would at least feel that way, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, if they do, then why would they want to subject themselves to that all the time from this group? They clearly wouldn't. They would try to what? Probably, separate themselves from it, yeah?
I'm impressed with the way that you can work around words. However, I still don't believe that it's segregation. I believe that there are differences in all humans. And you want to talk about like the basis of America, we can get real deep into
All
that
you're doing
shit.
is changing the argument instead of answering to it.
I did
the
answer.
idea is
Neither
that
one
the
is
basic
wrong,
human-
and
the
everyone is
idea-
entitled to their own opinion, and there is no conflict unless you create it.
Yeah, well,
And you're
while I
creating it.
appreciate the compliment of me being such a fine wordsmith, I feel like I'm dumbing this down quite a bit. Make sure that we can get the actual answer.
I
So
gave you the answer.
If the idea here is like, but I don't believe that. But when you say, I don't believe that, but at the same time, you feel like almost everybody in that group would feel like they had their basic kind of human dignity violated in some way. So the order of the day, in order to not create conflict, would be to separate themselves from those people.
No.
I don't know. Well, then how exactly would you deal with it then?
If there are
Without
people-
having your human dignity violated? I don't actually get that.
Do you genuinely think that humans as a whole can go throughout life without becoming offended in some way or having their basic dignity violated? Because you're referring to Christianity and their belief system, so you're having your belief system violated. So your dignity, in other words, is you've strung them together.
Yeah, and that necessarily creates conflict. When that dignity is
because you've
violated.
created conflict out of it. That's what I'm saying. I just don't think that the two have to coincide.
Created conflict out of it. It's that you can't always walk away.
You can, actually.
When your dignity is being violated, right?
Maybe you are incapable of walking away whenever your dignity is violated, but when mine is, because it happens all the time. It comes with the chair, comes with the hair, comes with people calling me it, as they did at the beginning of the show. I take grace and I say have a very nice day. No, I don't. Me personally.
Well, wait, what are you going to do? Hang on. What's your answer? You're going to do what?
I would diffuse that part of the conversation. Now, if you're talking about actually separating, I don't. I spoke
how would you
in my
diffuse it?
town.
By walking away, right?
Oh, okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, how would you diffuse it? You would walk away, yeah.
From that specific situation with that specific conversation and that specific person, yes. From that person as a whole, no.
So then why
I would also be open to having like wholesome conversations about religion.
If you yourself would want to separate yourself from that situation in order to avoid conflict, it stands to reason that most people in your situation would want to do the same thing. If this is a case that they want to separate themselves, which has been my point the entire time, right? Why in the future would they want to engage with the same person who's not going to back off on their laurels of, no, I won't lie to you?
To create change, to create opinionated change, because I think that, you're running on the basis that like it is wrong for you to lie. It is wrong for someone to ask you to lie, right?
Right.
Okay. So if you and I were sitting in a room and having a conversation one-on-one as human beings speaking about the human existence, I think that I would want to open up conversation of like why you feel that way and why you feel the need to present your opinion as the dominant and correct opinion instead of being a kind human person.
Yeah,
I think that creating space between people is only going to create conflict.
But
creating distance.
Conflict in and of itself.
You done? Okay, great. So can I finish? Because you did that to me.
Is it going to take you forever to finish?
It took you forever to finish.
It didn't take me very long. If you want to recap on the conversation, you've had far more speaking time than me. I've been very courteous to you.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah.
I just think that you enjoy.
Calm down and we can finish the conversation. Go ahead.
Oh, dear Lord. I think that you are incapable of not using this scenario without conflict.
No, I'm saying that the entailment of the scenario itself is conflict.
How?
Well, because if you have two ideologies where both believe that their dignity is being violated, just in the form of communicating with each other, just in the form of communication itself, then the only answer to not create conflict in the form of communication would be to not communicate. If you can give me a way to reconcile that, I'm all ears.